You see, the majority of individuals believe that they have to overcome life, that they must fight against the tides of uncertainty, working tirelessly to influence events, control situations, and make their wishes come true. What if you stopped, though? What if you leaned into the universe's rhythm with a silent, unflinching trust that everything, yes, everything, always works out for you, rather than bracing yourself against the chaos? The notion of supposing that the game is rigged in your favor is an oddity, not with conceit or a sense of entitlement, but with the calmness of someone who understands that they are a part of something much smarter than their own schemes. Imagine going about your days with the unwavering conviction that life is a masterfully planned ballet in which every mistake, every setback, and every seeming failure is just a deft turn in the choreography, rather than a string of chance disasters or haphazard triumphs. It's an offer to view things differently, not a mistake. The issue is that we view uncertainty as a threat rather than an adventure, because we are so used to dread and resistance. To protect ourselves from the pain of disappointment, we prepare ourselves with anxiety and expect it. Some of the things we say are, "I'm just being realistic," when in reality, we're just being scared. But think about the weight that goes away when you decide to live as though life itself genuinely loves you. That even when the map doesn't make sense, the course of your life is always taking you in a meaningful direction. Acting as though everything is going well for you is not an attempt to ignore the storms. Its purpose is to carry an inner light that they cannot dim. It is to navigate ambiguity with poise. You trust the process, not because you know the result. You start to approach failures with interest rather than fear. You view endings as mild prods toward greater beginnings, rather than as failures. You smile because you are free of the delusion that life must be wonderful, not because it is. And the world starts to reflect it back to you if you start living this way, really live this way. Things get easier. Opportunities present themselves. People frequently arrive without warning when you need them. A pattern starts to emerge from the coincidences. It's because you finally tuned into the natural flow of things, not because you're suddenly being favored by some outside power. You are no longer gripping for control. By doing this, you've made room for life's deeper intellect to enter your being. Pretending to be happy when you're not is not the point here. It's not about denying your pain or pretending to be happy. It's about developing a religion that is radical, in the sanctity of your own experience, not in some far-off God. The faith that mutters, "I'm not sure how. I'm not sure when, but I'm certain that this is also working for me." A faith that transforms every setback into a revelation, every heartache into a sacred invitation, and every delay into divine timing. Surrender has a strange power about it. The surrender of resistance, not the surrender of defeat. You start to realize that life has always been on your side, albeit in unexpected ways, when you stop demanding that it live up to your expectations. The cosmos doesn't speak in clear terms, you see. It uses synchronicity, paradoxes, and spirals to communicate. And only when you stop expecting things to make sense does it start to make sense. For a brief while, attempt to project an air of security and assume that every door that is closed has a purpose. As though each difficult moment is a seed, and each unanswered plea is a guide to a more compatible path. Start walking with a calm excitement for how everything might come together in ways you couldn't have predicted, even if you tried, rather than a fear of what might go wrong. And observe gradually, but steadily, as life starts to rise up, to live up to that anticipation. Give up control. Have faith in life's course. It sounds straightforward, almost beautiful, but the life truth is one of the hardest things for the human mind to comprehend. From an early age, we are taught that everything will fall apart if we don't hold on tight. plan carefully, and worry all the time. We secretly think that we are the only thing keeping the world from collapsing around us. As a result, we live tense bodies, tense thoughts, restless emotions, constantly expecting the next disaster, constantly getting ready for an unknown future. Have you, however, ever paused to consider, who told you that life must be controlled? Who told you that things would go wrong if you didn't have anxiety and constantly micromanage every possibility? You see, our way of thinking is deeply ingrained with the delusion that life is something that needs to be controlled or tamed, and that we are apart from it. When you perceive yourself as an outsider, you feel the need to control the outside in order to feel secure within. This is where all the dread starts. In actuality, however, you are not distinct from life. Life is you. You are the same intelligence that sends waves to beach without a manual, beats your heart without your consent, and produces trees without direction. You still fear that everything would fall apart if you let go, even if you have a deep connection to something that is much beyond your conscious understanding. But maybe things can only start to get better when you let go. Being passive is not the same as trusting life's course. The goal is to achieve a profound alignment. It's not the same as surrendering. It involves returning to harmony with the events that are already taking place. Life is motion. It never stops moving, evolving, and unfolding. Tension is created when you attempt to stop that movement, hold things steady, or push them in a specific direction. You cause conflict between reality and your expectations. We frequently refer to that friction as anguish. Consider the river. It doesn't inquire as to its destination. It doesn't try to skip the rocks or avoid the bends. It flows because that is its nature. And the beauty of the river is not found in its straightness, but in its curves. Likewise, your life is not meant to be a rigid line from point A to point B. It is meant to meander, to surprise you, to take you through forests you didn't plan for, and valleys you never dreamed of. But if you're too busy trying to paddle upstream, you'll miss the magic of where the current is trying to take you. There's a kind of grace that arrives when you finally say, I don't need to control this anymore. You stopped holding on, not because you no longer cared. You gave life a second chance at breathing. You gave yourself permission to breathe once more. What if letting go means I lose something important? Is a question you may have. However, I would like to know how many things you have lost as a result of clinging on too hard. How many times have you missed opportunities because you were preoccupied with attempting to manage the next one? Ironically, we frequently miss living life because of our fixation on managing it. We forget that the present is already sacred because we are so focused on the results. Before we let ourselves unwind, we wait for the ideal alignment and circumstance. However, perfection was never guaranteed in life. All it guaranteed was presence, and all you ever needed was presence. Letting go is not something you do once. It is an exercise, a moment-by-moment reminder that you are here to surf the tide, not to control it. Additionally, the waves will be high on some days. The water will be still on other days. However, the circumstances don't have to determine your peace. Knowing that you are never really off course can bring you serenity. The dance includes even the delays and detours. Life has a way of showing its wisdom in retrospect, even if you don't always comprehend them at the time. We are frequently saved by the things we battled the hardest against. The plans that collapsed allowed us to take a breather. The individuals who departed created room for our actual selves to show through. You're not implying that you don't care when you let go. You're declaring that you trust something larger than your fear. You're expressing that you don't think life is against you. Its goal is to help you grow. Furthermore, progress isn't always a sign of improvement. It appears like quiet at times. It appears to be chaos at times. But a deeper order is emerging, even in the midst of the chaos. Your life is playing a melody, much like a symphony, that may seem discordant in one measure before resolving into harmony later. Only when you quit attempting to skip ahead does that make sense. Breathe, relax, and let the burden to drop off your shoulders. Have faith you're not lost. You're just following a course that doesn't tell you ahead of time. In actuality, there is no need to sort out everything at this time. All you have to do is feel it. All you have to do is live it. And you'll realize that letting go was never the end the more you believe that you are right where you're supposed to be. It was always the start. What happens if failure isn't really failure? What if what you perceive as a setback is actually only a little portion of a bigger, invisible thread that is gradually becoming visible in the bigger picture of your life? We've been educated to view life as it is, you see. Effort leads to success. Reward adheres to the strategy. We call something incorrect, broken, or a mistake if it doesn't work out as planned. However, the universe does not function according to human concepts or timeframes. Its movements are not linear. It bends, it spirals, it veers off course, it uses contrast to teach, and it doesn't say anything. And the majority of the time, the exact event we wish had never occurred opens the door to a reality that we could never have envisioned if we had been left to our own narrow notions of what ought to be. It takes a certain sort of vision to regard every setback as a necessary component of the plan. It is not the visual perception that is constrained by outward appearances. It's the soul seeing, a sort of inner vision that observes not just what occurs, but also how it transforms us. Even in the midst of the turmoil, there is a subliminal rhythm and order. However, you must remain motionless long enough to hear it. And while life is peaceful, there is no stillness. It appears when you give up trying to control the storm. Sometimes we lose sight of what we have because we are so focused on what we have lost, before realizing months later that it released us from a life that was never suited for us. Losing a job feels like failure until we realize how much we were compromising in order to gain acceptance. A breakup seems like rejection. Delays are like heavenly silence, until something finally shows up that makes us mutter, now I understand. Your comfort is not important to life. It's curious about your awakening. Additionally, waking up frequently feels more like falling apart than rising. Desiring results, ambitions, dreams, and plans is not intrinsically bad. They play a role in how we move through the world. However, the pain starts when we think that such results are the only way to be happy. We become anxious when things doesn't go as planned because we mistake the map for the land. For us, the diversion means disaster. In actuality, though, life is constantly directing us. It's simply that its wording is too nuanced for a mentality that is always passing judgment on everything. Therefore, we need to work on listening more deeply. Don't curse the door as it closes. Hold on. Find out what you're being shielded from. Don't become unworthy when the relationship ends, even if you don't know the solution yet. Consider the aspects of yourself that you can now take back. Don't give up when the opportunity passes you by. Think about the possibility that something more significant is getting ready in the background. Why I experience this is not the question. What am I supposed to learn from this? Everything changes with that one inquiry. Ease is not guaranteed in life. Evolution is promised. Furthermore, evolution rarely occurs in a clear or convenient way. Tension, loss, and the dissolution of our identity allow for the emergence of something more profound. Imagine a seed planted in the ground. It appears as though nothing is occurring from above. It's buried. It's dark. However, internal change is taking place. The shell is breaking. The roots are spreading. Slowly, imperceptibly, something is taking shape. Even so, you could claim it's failing if you didn't know any better. It is stuck. It's lost. However, it will eventually break the surface if you give it time. That is the process of growth. Before anything is seen, it is silent. Before it becomes evident, it is puzzling. Therefore, don't think that life is punishing you when it knocks you to your knees. It might be getting ready. Don't fix things right away. When they break, take some time to sit in the parts. Beneath the anguish, there is insight. In the shattering, something is always revealed. Perhaps it's the reality you've been trying to avoid. Perhaps it's the strength you were unaware of. Perhaps it's the route you would never have taken on your own. Indeed, it could cause pain. It may not be logical. We make snap judgments about time. Just because we don't like the way something feels at the moment, we label it as terrible. However, life is not a picture. It's a narrative. Stories also take time to develop. The plot's overall meaning may be revealed by the twist you don't grasp today. If you allow yourself to believe that even what appears to be devastation is a part of a larger restoration, there's a strange kind of kindness in the unknown. This isn't naive optimism. This does not negate the suffering. It's the decision to think that suffering is not the whole picture. It's concluding that beauty is still being woven by an unseen thread even in the dark, even if it's not yet visible to your eyes. Letting go of the idea that your value is determined by the results you can control means accepting that every setback is a necessary component of the plan. The goal is to release the ego's demand for achievement in order to feel secure, and you find something incredible in that letting go. Life was never intended for you to manipulate. You're supposed to have faith in how it shapes you. So let the plan play out. Permit the delays. Permit the reroutes. Allow them to come and instruct you. You will not pass what is intended for you. You become the version of yourself that is prepared to receive it, not because you seek it out. And sometimes, in order to become that version, you have to break apart in unexpected ways. But have faith that you'll see how everything fits together when you look back. Never were the failures failures. The losses were never losses. They were simply the required breaks in between the notes of a song you were singing, but were unaware of at the time. You are not being punished by life. It's preparing you for what you're really here to live, not for what you want. Every setback starts to appear less like an ending and more like a doorway, if you can start to see it, even if it's only dimly. A silent, enigmatic portal that leads to a place more stunning than you could ever dream of, while still attempting to maintain control. The energy of expectation is strange. It shapes everything, even if it is invisible. It subtly shapes your perception of the environment, while being in the background of your mind, frequently undetected. In actuality, your attitude toward life and your expectations for its outcome have a significant impact on what life has to offer you. You start drawing in the kind of reality that reflects your confidence when you behave with a subtly persistent idea that everything always turns out well for you. You can achieve ease, alignment, and trust by tuning into a frequency that becomes your default state of being, not by using magic or forcing the universe to do as you want. Because of our conditioning, we tend to think that if something can go wrong, it most likely will. Thus, we prepare ourselves physically as well as emotionally. Our bodies are tense. We shorten our breath. Defensiveness is where we start to live, as though we are the exhausted warriors in a battlefield that is life. This expectation of difficulty is more than just an emotion. It turns into a filter through which everything is perceived. Our anxiety is confirmed the instant something small goes musically wrong. We're saying, "See, I knew this wouldn't work out." Thus, the cycle persists, not because we are being punished by the outside world, but rather because we are unwittingly confirming our preconceived notions. What happens, though, if you flip that equation? What if you started to anticipate positive things as a calm, steady understanding, rather than as a hope or a desperate wish? What if you approached every circumstance, choice, and unknown with composed assurance rather than fear? Imagine going into a room without asking yourself, will they accept me? However, being aware that I bring peace wherever I go. Imagine pursuing a goal with confidence that it is for you, rather than with anxiety. You start to radiate a different energy that is more magnetic and less grabbing, and the world reacts. How can my thoughts affect reality? Is a common question. But perhaps, how can they not? Is a better question. You're constantly in direct contact with life. You're constantly interacting with how you see it. Depending only on their expectations, two people can have very different experiences on the same day. Only the traffic, the offensive remark, and the delay will be noticeable. The stranger's sweet smile, the chance, the beauty in the mundane will all be noticed by the other. The day doesn't make a difference. The lens makes a difference. You begin to move with less hurry and more faith when you assume that things will always work out for you. You no longer require certainty to feel comfortable, so you give up trying to control every little detail. Your internal posture, not the outside circumstances, is what determines your level of safety. Ironically, you become more sensitive to life's flow when you have this serene confidence. You start to notice opportunities that you may have overlooked if you were too preoccupied with looking for danger. You act with inspiration because you're in alignment, not out of desperation. This does not imply that you will never encounter difficulties. Life will continue to present unexpected challenges. However, your perspective on those moments shifts. You take a breath and say, somehow, even this is for me, rather of giving in to your frustration or anxiety. Additionally, because you think it, your mind starts looking for proof. All of a sudden, the detour turns into the highlight of the trip. A better door opens as a result of the refusal. You are shielded from what you were unaware was imminent by the delay. You come to see that your expectations influenced not just your emotional reaction, but also your poise. Consider your expectations to be like a compass. Every movement feels risky when it is set to fear. Every quiet seems like a sign of desertion. Every issue seems like a danger. However, everything becomes a message when you have your compass set to trust. Everything turns into a manual. You're done trying to figure out what's wrong. You have a sense of what is right, and the difference is entirely made by that small change. Pretending everything is all right when it's not is not the point. It's about having faith that despite the appearance of uncertainty, things will turn out well for you. This could be referred to as delusion. But take a deeper look. There are many successful persons in the world who had faith in their abilities before they had any evidence. There was no evidence to support their belief. It produced the proof. They pretended that the world would eventually catch up to them, and that their success was certain. This isn't conceit. Alignment is this. It's the silent strength of moving toward your goals without asking for assurances. It is the result of your inner world becoming more powerful than the cacophony of your doubts. Children are naturally aware of this. They see big futures, audacious goals, and impossibly difficult tasks, and they never once consider whether they are practical. We only learn to decrease our expectations to match the disappointments around us as we become older and start to absorb other people's anxieties. Expectations, however, are not supposed to decrease. It's supposed to grow. It is a force of creation, a prayer you utter with your life, rather than your words. Everything you do, every idea you cultivate, every risk you take, or don't take, stems from your expectations. Thus, allow yourself to hope for the best, Give yourself permission to think that events are developing in ways you are not yet aware of. Talk to yourself with affirmations rather than cautions. Act as though you are being carried already. Imagine that the road beneath your feet is being laid for you, one step at a time. Because it is, in a peculiar way. Your entire experience transforms when you change your expectation from one of fear to one of trust. It's because you change, not because the world does. And because of your presence, this world is inevitably reshaped to reflect you. Eliminating reliance on outside events to feel safe has a wonderfully liberating effect. Most individuals live as though they can't be at peace with themselves unless the outside world is perfectly ordered. They wait for the job offer to feel worthwhile, for the relationship to feel complete, and for other people's acceptance to feel deserving. And while they wait, they become prisoners, not of the outside world, but of their own conviction that achieving peace requires achieving certain results. But what if that isn't true? What if the statement, "My inner certainty does not waver with the winds of the world," is the most powerful position you can adopt? Being rooted like a tree with its foundation deep in the invisible is what it means to live from inner conviction. Even if the weather and storms may fluctuate, the roots remain strong. The tree knows it belongs to the soil, not because it has power over the sky. In a similar vein, nothing outside of you can really upset you if your sense of peace, direction, and purpose originates yourself. Not denial, not postponement, and not even because you're not gaining power from the events. You're drawing it from the core of who you are. Being unconcerned with the world is not the point here. It's not about denying your feelings or acting as though nothing matters. It's about making the decision to not allow circumstances outside of your music control to influence your inner serenity. It's realizing that the gatekeeper is your thoughts. Your internal environment is shaped by every idea you permit, every fear you feed, and every presumption you hold on to. And the prism through which you view the outside world is your inner universe. Events from the outside world are continuously influencing that world. You will remain unstable forever as a result. The waves of validation, luck, and approbation cause your confidence to rise and fall. However, everything changes when you understand that your ability to pick your perspective is where the true power is. Imagine entering a room and feeling judged, tense, and disapproved of. The ego that was conditioned to rely on external stimuli may become smaller or overcompensate. However, the new self, the self grounded in inner truth, remains motionless because it isn't performing. It doesn't falter. It isn't there to gain acceptance. It exists in order to exist, complete and rooted. Though they can be beneficial, reading affirmations and repeating mantras are not the source of this way of life. It is the result of intense, purposeful practice. Moments of stillness are when you start to realize that you are not your thoughts, feelings, or circumstances. The awareness that notices everything is you, and there is calm in that awareness. A sort of quiet that feels fine without evidence. A sort of unearned serenity. It is recalled that the world reacts differently when you leave this location. It seems as though life starts to fit your steadiness. You cease responding to every bump and turn as though it were a crisis, not because things get easier all of a sudden. Your ability to see what is really important improves, and you become more deliberate and thoughtful. Because you can finally listen to what's inside, when you're not always attempting to fix what's outside. Consider the ocean. Storms roar, winds howl, and waves crash on the surface. However, if you go deep enough, you'll find a silence that is unaffected by anything. You have that stillness within of you. It always has. You are not required to make it. All you need to do is go back to it. and going back to it entails letting go of the idea that your situation determines how good you are. It entails acting with faith. Not that everything will work out for you, but that you will be all right, even if it doesn't. It's critical to realize that control is not the same as this inner assurance. Actually, the reverse is true. The ego's attempt to control the unknown is called control. The soul's acceptance of the fact that it is capable of handling the unknown is known as certainty. You can feel at ease in the now, without worrying about the future, when you live from inner assurance. You walk with humility and openness, yet you also have quiet strength. You've already discovered reassurance within yourself, so you stop looking for it. It's true that fear will persist. There will still be times when you are shaken by the world, when uncertainty begins to sneak in, and when plans go awry. Even yet, you keep in mind that I am not what is occurring to me. It is up to me to decide how to respond to the situation, and you take back your control with that decision. A soft, grounded power, rather than a loud, spectacular one. The kind that is already at peace and doesn't need to shout. Living from this place enables you to release a great deal of needless pain. You no longer have to be correct. You no longer require approval from others for your path. Your sense of self no longer depends on comparison, praise, or proving anything. Therefore, you cease comparing your path to others. Just being in agreement, being truthful with yourself, and feeling a connection to something more profound than your constantly shifting thoughts is sufficient. And everything starts to change from there. You ultimately bowed toward your own truth, not because you made life bend. This is what inner freedom is all about. Distancing oneself from life is not the point. It's about becoming so grounded in yourself that you can embrace life fearlessly, so that you stay whole, regardless of whether the day offers sunlight or shadow. You stay the same, whether you are praised or misinterpreted. You stay in the moment because you were never seeking tranquility outside in the first place, regardless of how things turn out. All along, you were carrying it. We often misinterpret surrender. For a lot of people, it sounds like weakness, surrender, or defeat by life. We connect it to failure, pacifism, and a sort of depressing breakdown when confronted with unchangeable circumstances. But that is not at all what true surrender is. It's not a sign of weakness, it's wisdom. Resignation is not the answer. The ultimate kind of trust is this one. Perhaps more than anything, it is the process of letting go of the ego's draining conviction that it needs to be in charge of every consequence in order to feel secure. The human mind, you see, is constantly attempting to construct certainty from uncertainty. It prepares, worries, computes, and analyzes. It develops plans, contingency plans, and even plans for plans. It imagines every scenario that could go wrong in an attempt to shield itself from disappointment. Furthermore, this is frequently just fear into submission, even though it may appear to be responsibility or foresight. It's not a good idea to try to control the future with an alert mind. It's afraid. When you give up fighting life, you are surrendering. When you eventually realize that there was never anything to fight for, you put down your weapons, not because you've lost. It's realizing that your fight was against your own craving for dominance. And the one thing keeping you from finding calm was the control itself. Giving up doesn't imply that you no longer care. It indicates that you give up resisting. You stop suffocating with your firm grip, the exact existence that you are attempting to mold. The person who gives up has a quiet strength because they've witnessed something that most people overlook in that surrender. That micromanagement of life is unnecessary. It must be believed. Take a peek at nature. The trees don't force their foliage to open. It is not the waves that push themselves to the beach. It all has a profound rhythm, a cosmic time that happens naturally, without human intervention. And you align yourself with something far smarter than your anxieties when you start to trust that same rhythm in your own life. The illusion of control is a delicate one. It's impossible to predict exactly how things will work out. Even with careful planning, everything can fall apart in an instant. You continue to plan despite this. It indicates that you plan calmly rather than frantically. You act and make choices, but you do so with a light hand. You don't hold on to the result as though it determines your value. You learn to let things happen and have faith that they may still be headed in the correct direction, even if they don't go your way. Clarity is another benefit of surrender. You can actually see what's in front of you more clearly when you're not fixated on achieving a certain outcome. You see things that you previously couldn't see because you were too nervous. When you're not bound by a strict notion of how things should be, you become receptive to possibilities you would not have otherwise explored. And life starts to flow through you more easily in that openness. Your resistance ceases to obstruct the flow. Instead of becoming a dam, you become a vessel. People frequently inquire as to how to surrender, as though it were a one-time event. However, giving up is not a single action. It's a stance, an attitude. It's the constant discipline of letting go. Each time your thoughts tighten their hold, you gently release the tension. Each time you discover yourself worrying, stressing, or catastrophizing, you go back to the breath. You go back to the present. I don't need to know how this ends to be at peace right now, you tell yourself. Furthermore, surrendering does not imply passively waiting for life to happen to you. It implies that you take action when it's appropriate, but let go of the need for a particular outcome. You trust life to do its part after you've done yours. You release the chronology. You let the result go. You abandon the notion that success is contingent on everything going as planned. You start to feel a freedom you didn't even realize you were lacking as a result of that release. Our resistance to what occurs accounts for a great deal of our misery rather than the actual events themselves. We oppose reality. We convince ourselves that it must be different and that it ought to be. And by doing this, we prevent ourselves from seeing the wisdom that lies inside the existing situation. The road to that wisdom is surrender. It's the transition from force to faith, from terror to presence, and from frustration to flow. Allowing, stating, I trust that even this has purpose, and accepting both the unpleasant and the happy are sacrosanct, the unknown as well as the simple. Because you are no longer at war with life when you give up. It is conversing with you. You begin to listen instead of yelling your demands. Furthermore, the sound of stillness is frequently far more profound than anything you could have guessed from the cacophony of control. Ironically, serenity finds you after you give up trying to get it through control. You start to experience delight from inside when you cease expecting enjoyment from results. You realize you are never inherently unworthy when you give up attempting to prove yourself. The instant you stop grasping and begin to trust, the whole shift starts. The instant you understand that surrender is about aligning with something greater, more authentic, and more timeless than your anxieties rather than about losing. It's not that simple. It will be fought at every turn by the ego. Everything will fall apart if I don't hold on. It will yell. However, what if that's the very delusion that's holding you back? What if letting go is the rise you've been waiting for, rather than the crash you believe it to be? What if life surprises you at last, the instant you reveal the outcome? What if surrender marks the start of the adventure your soul came here to live, rather than its conclusion? Therefore, when your plans fail, when you don't get the response, or when the door won't open, stop, take a deep breath, and tell yourself, I give up. And know that you are not giving up at that moment. You are surrendering to life, wisdom, and the deep-seated conviction that everything will work out for you. Because you are not here to control the river. To trust the current is why you are here. Additionally, it is already taking you to your intended destination.